It's time now for some real education. Ken Kesey was an American novelist and an essayist. He was born in 1935 and died in 2001. And during his time he experimented with some LSD and considered himself a link between the 1950s beat generation and the hippies of the 1960s. His most famous and influential book was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in 1962, which was made into an award-winning movie starring the one, the only, Jack Nicholson in 1975.
Yeah, Jack Nicholson before he became a parody of himself. So this week on the Dr. Duke Show, this is the inaugural week, right? This is the week that the reins of power transfer entirely to Democrats. Thanks again, soccer moms. And what we have here is a problem. For all of the instant classics this week, I'm going to do dystopias. A dystopia is the opposite of a utopia. A utopia is like a Garden of Eden, right? It's a perfect place. It's heaven. It's nirvana. A dystopia is a attempt by human beings to create the perfect social and organization, only to have it turn into fascism, right? Dystopias. You think of great books like 1984 by George Orwell. You think about Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Every quote we're going to do this week is from a dystopia, and almost every one of them was written by left-wingers, by the way. Left-wingers, not right-wingers, with the exception of Ayn Rand, who we'll also have tomorrow, I believe. Left-wingers who are warning about what happens when human beings try to create the perfect world. It fails. And it's perfectly appropriate for the coming dystopia. America has entered a dystopia. We are now one of those novels. America, as we're about to see her, with all of this censorship and all of these calls for reprogramming 70 million plus people who happen to vote the wrong way, according to the left, you have entered dystopia territory. So it's only fitting for Instant Classic that we look at some of these left-wingers warning you that this day would come. So take a look at this quote from Ken Kesey's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It's a great book. It's about a man who's not insane, who ends up in a mental ward as a way of getting out of a harder jail sentence in a serious jail. He takes that. He opts for an imprisonment in a sanitarium to get some mental help as opposed to having to stay a long stay. His name is Randall Patrick McMurphy, played brilliantly by Jack Nicholson, by the way. And of course, it's a huge indictment of the way we treat, the Orwellian way we treat mental patients, how almost every one of these so-called sociological goods, right, the new sanatoriums, they all turned out to be about power, just like the incoming Democrat party. It's not about fixing anything. It's about power and who should be allowed to have it and who should be punished for seeking it. And so McMurphy, who's not insane but is surrounded by people who have various levels of mental distress, comes to butt heads with Nurse Ratched, right, who is this tight nurse with her hair in a bun, just the perfect example of somebody who is bound. In fact, think Nancy Pelosi with a better smile, and you got Nurse Ratched. So not surprisingly, McMurphy and Nurse Ratched go hand to hand. And here's a great quote from Randall Patrick McMurphy. He says, talking about human nature generally, the flock, comparing all human beings to chickens, just as good as sheep, right? The flock gets sight of a spot of blood on one chicken, and they all go to pecking at it, see, till they rip the chicken to shreds, blood and bones and feathers. But usually a couple of the flock get spotted in the fracas. As they're killing the other chicken, they get splattered as well. Then it's their turn. And a few more chickens get spots of blood on them and get pecked to death, and more and more. Oh, a pecking party can wipe out a whole flock of chickens in a matter of a few hours, buddy. I seen it. A mighty awesome sight. The only way to prevent it with chickens is to clip blinders on them so they can't see. And that's a brilliant example for a man who has a father-in-law who for 20 years raised chickens. Is there a better metaphor for the lemming-like behavior, the demand for uniformity, the one-sided intolerance, bigotry, and censorship of the progressive left in this country? Because if there is, I can't think of it. Because you can't be too left nowadays. They've already purged the conservatives. Now they're coming after you, moderate Democrats.